18 young people, every one of them in their 20s, walk into a laboratory in Berkeley, California. Then 15 older people, every one of them somewhere near 70, walk into the very same room. And they all sit down and do the identical little chore. Somebody shows them 120 pairs of words and asks them to learn which word is married to which. This one goes with that one, and so on down the whole stack. Then everybody goes home and climbs into a bed that has been wired up with little electrodes stuck to the scalp, and those wires quietly write down the brain waves all night long, hour after hour, while the person sleeps. And in the morning they all come back and they get tested on those exact same pairs, this time lying inside a machine that photographs the working brain. Now here is the thing that ought to make you sit up. The young group remembers the pairs about as well as you would guess. Fine. But the older group misses more than half of what the young group holds on to, something like 55% worse. And when the scientists went back and read the brainwave scribbles from that night, the deepest, slowest sort of sleep, the kind that draws these big, slow, rolling swells across the monitor like a calm ocean seen from far away, that older group was making only about a quarter of what the young brains made. A quarter. 3/4 of it, gone. Same night. The same 8 hours, give or take. The same silly list of words. But somewhere between the moment the lights went out and the moment the sun came up, one pile of brains kept the memory safe, and the other pile let more than half of it dribble away into the dark. And I want you to notice something sneaky about this experiment. Not one person in that building was told the real test was about sleep. They thought it was about words. It was never about the words. So I have to ask you the detective's question. What in the world is going on during those quiet hours in the middle of the night when nothing seems to be happening at all that could open up a gap that big? And, if we can figure that out, is there anything a person past 65 could actually do about it before they even close their eyes? Let me start where any lazy detective starts. With the obvious suspect. You already have the answer ready, don't you? The old brain just wears out. Cells die. The wiring frays. You get older, you forget where you put your keys. That is simply the tax you pay for the years. Case closed, everybody go home. And I have to tell you, that answer is so comfortable, so easy to swallow, that most people never poke it even once. The brain rots, memory fades, what did you expect? But I want you to be suspicious of any answer that comfortable, because look at what it fails to explain. If the memory just crumbled because the machinery is old and tired, then it shouldn't matter one bit whether you test the person right after they learn the words or the next morning. Old and tired is old and tired at 3 in the afternoon just as much as at dawn. Yet the whole drama in that Berkeley study happened overnight. They learned the words fine. The trouble came in the dark. The forgetting had an appointment, and it kept it at a very particular time of day. A slow general rotting of the brain doesn't keep appointments. So the easy suspect has an alibi problem. Let's set him aside. Not innocent, exactly. But he is not the one who did this thing. Now let's look harder at the numbers. Because the numbers are our first real clue, and they refuse to fit the simple decay story. That Berkeley work, it was published in a serious journal, Nature Neuroscience, in January of the year 2013. And here are the two figures I want you to hold in your two hands, one in each, and feel the weight of them together. Deep sleep in the older group, down about 75%. Overnight memory in the older group, down about 55%. Now, if these two things had nothing to do with each other, you would not expect them to march in step like that. You'd expect the memory to droop for one reason and the sleep to droop for some other unrelated reason, and they'd have no business being roughly the same size. But they are roughly the same size, and they are pointing the same direction, and when a detective sees two numbers holding hands like that, walking down the street together, he starts to wonder if they are not strangers at all. He starts to wonder if the missing deep sleep and the missing memory are the same crime, seen from two windows. So the wire runs from the sleep to the memory. Now I have to follow that wire and ask, what is it about deep sleep that has anything to do with remembering a word from last night? Sleep looks like nothing. The person is lying there. The lights are off. The body is limp. What could possibly be getting done? Plenty, it turns out. Let me give you the picture the Berkeley people paint, because it is a good one. When you learn something during the day, a word pairs, a name, a face, where you parked the car, it gets written down first in a little structure deep in the brain called the hippocampus. Think of the hippocampus as the loading dock. It is fast, it grabs things quickly, but it is small and it is temporary. It is not where you want your memories to live for the next 20 years. The place for long keeping is up front, in the outer folds behind your forehead, the prefrontal cortex. That is the warehouse. Big, roomy, built for the long haul. And here is the lovely part. During that deepest, slowest sleep, the brain runs a delivery surface between the two. Those big, slow waves you saw rolling across the monitor, they are not just idle scenery. They act like a truck. Every slow wave, in a sense, backs up to the loading dock, takes on a load of the day's memories, drives them up to the warehouse in the front of the brain, and unloads them into long storage. Night after night, the truck runs its route. And that is how a fleeting thing you learned on Tuesday becomes something you still own on Friday and next year. The memory doesn't simply sit still and hope to last. It gets moved, in the dark, by the slow waves while you snore. Now you can already feel where this is heading, can't you? If the deep sleep is the truck, and the older brains are making only a quarter as much deep sleep, then the truck is barely running. It shows up to the loading dock once instead of 4 times. The memories are sitting there on the dock in the morning, half of them never picked up, and by daylight they have spoiled. That is why the gap opens overnight and not in the afternoon. The forgetting kept its appointment because the truck missed its route. But I promised you this was a detective story, and a good detective doesn't fall in love with his first theory. So let me twist the knife a little, because there is a detail here that is stranger and sadder than just a lazy truck. Where do those slow waves get made in the first place? They are generated up front, in the medial part of that same prefrontal cortex, the very warehouse district the truck is supposed to deliver to. And that particular patch of brain is one of the first regions to wither as we age. So think about the cruelty of it. The part of the brain that produces the slow waves is the part that goes early, which means the older brain loses the ability to make the truck at the same time and in the same place that it needs the truck to protect the warehouse. The delivery surface breaks down right where the deliveries were supposed to go. It is not that the memories are weak, it is that the road between the dock and the warehouse has washed out, and nobody is driving. And now the timeline of this crime gets truly interesting, because it did not start at 65. This is the sort of clue that makes you rethink the whole case. The erosion of deep sleep, the slow, quiet loss, it begins astonishingly early. In the research program of Matthew Walker and his colleagues at Berkeley, the decline in that deep, slow wave sleep starts as early as a person's late 20s. Your late 20s. When you feel invincible, when you think sleep is something you can shortchange and pay back later, the truck has already quietly started running a little less often. By the time you are 50, you have lost roughly half of your deep sleep compared to when you were young. Half. And by 80, those big slow brainwaves are so faint, they are almost impossible to find on the recording at all. Nearly flat. The ocean has gone still. So the thing we are investigating is not a sudden event at retirement. It is a slow leak that has been going on for decades, under the floorboards, silent, while everything upstairs looked fine. And that changes the questions I want to ask. Because if this is a machine that has been slowly failing since you were young, the real puzzle is not only why it fails. The real puzzle is whether we can do anything to make that truck run one more time tonight, to nudge those slow waves back up even a little, to catch a few more of the memories before they spoil on the dock. Hold that thought, because the next clue is going to send this whole investigation somewhere I promise you did not expect. Here is the twist that stopped me cold. Take 2 people the same age, both past 70. Open up their brains with the machines we have and look for the gunk. There is a sticky protein that piles up in there as people get older. We call it amyloid. And say these 2 people have exactly the same amount of it, the same mess piled in the same corners. You would bet money they are in the same trouble. But they are not. One of them has a sharp memory, quick, reliable. The other one is slipping, same damage, different outcome. So what separates them? When the Berkeley people looked, the thing that lined up was deep sleep. The person who still got good, strong, slow wave sleep was holding on to memory better, even with all that sludge sitting in the brain. And the one who had lost the deep sleep was losing the memory to match. Now think about what that means. It means the sludge is not the whole story. It means deep sleep is acting like a cushion, a reserve, something in the bank you can draw against when the damage comes. Two houses in the same flood, and one of them is up on stilts. Same water. One stays dry. So now I am even more suspicious. Because a good detective does not just ask what breaks the machine. He asks why some machines with the same broken part keep running anyway. And that question dragged me straight to a discovery that honestly sounds made up. It sounds like something a child would invent to explain where the bad dreams go. Here it is. Your brain, it turns out, has a plumbing system, a cleaning crew. And nobody knew it was there until about 14 years ago. A scientist named Micah Nedegard and her laboratory found it and gave it a name in the year 2012. The idea is this. All day long, while your brain is doing its work, thinking, worrying, remembering where you put your keys, it burns fuel. And anything that burns fuel makes waste. A fire makes ash. An engine makes soot. Your brain cells, humming away, leave little piles of molecular garbage behind them. And one of the things in that garbage is the very same sticky amyloid protein we were just talking about. So the question nobody had really asked is, where does the garbage go? Your body has a whole system of vessels for washing waste out of your tissues. But the brain, for the longest time, looked like it was left out. No obvious drainage. A city with no sewers. And that made no sense, because the brain is the hungriest, busiest organ you have. It should be drowning in its own trash. Well, Nedegard's people found the sewers. There is a network that pushes fluid. The clear fluid that bathes your brain right through the brain tissue itself, flushing the alleys between the cells, picking up the garbage, and carrying it out. And here is the part that turns this whole investigation on its head. That cleaning crew does its real work when you are asleep. Not just any sleep. Deep, slow wave sleep. The same deep sleep we have been chasing this whole time. When you fall into that deep stage, something physical happens that I still find hard to believe when I say it out loud. The brain cells shrink back a little. They pull in. And the space between them, the little gaps and channels, opens up by something like 60%. 60% wider. Imagine a crowded street at rush hour, shoulder to shoulder. Nobody can move. Now imagine everybody steps into the doorways and clears the road, and suddenly a fire truck can come roaring straight down the middle. That is your brain at night. It makes room. It opens the channels. And the fluid comes through and power washes the day's garbage out. So look at what we have now. It is the same suspect twice. Deep sleep hauls your memories from the short-term shelf to the long-term vault. That was the delivery truck. And deep sleep also opens the streets so the cleaning crew can wash the amyloid out. Two different night jobs, both riding on the same slow waves. And both of those jobs get quieter, year after year, as the slow waves fade. Now you can see why the person with more deep sleep stayed sharp even with the sludge. They were still running the power wash every night. They were bailing the boat while it took on water. But I am a suspicious man. A story this neat could still be wrong. Maybe the cleaning crew is real in a mouse, in a dish, in a machine, and does nothing much in a living person. I want to catch it in the act, in a human being, with the garbage actually leaving. And in the year 2026, somebody finally did. They took 39 people. And they ran them two ways. One way, the person got a normal night of sleep. The other way, they kept the person awake, deprived them of sleep. And in the morning, both times, they drew blood. Ordinary blood, out of the arm, and they measured the garbage in it. The amyloid, two different sizes of the amyloid protein, and another troublemaker tied to memory disease, a thing called phosphorylated tau. Now think hard about what you would expect. After a good night's sleep, if the cleaning crew did its job, the garbage should have been washed out of the brain and dumped into the bloodstream. So the blood in the morning should have more of it, not less. The trash is in the bin at the curb, not in the house. And that is exactly what they found. After real sleep, the levels of these proteins in the blood went up compared to the night with no sleep. The waste had been flushed out of the brain and into the blood, right on schedule overnight in living people measured for the first time, caught in the act. The cleaning crew is real, and it clocks in when you close your eyes. All right, so now we understand the crime and the mechanism. But a good investigator does not stop at understanding. He asks the dangerous question. If deep sleep is doing all this, and deep sleep is fading, can we push on it? Can we grab those slow waves and make them bigger on purpose tonight in an old brain and see if the memory comes back with them? Because if we can, then this is not a sad story about decay. It is a repair manual. So here is the experiment, and I love this one. They took 13 older adults, average age around 75, some as old as 84, and while these people slept, they wore something over the ears that could play a sound. Not music, not an alarm, just a soft little pulse of noise. We call it pink noise, a gentle shush like a wave sliding up a beach. But the trick was not the sound. The trick was the timing. A machine watched the brain waves in real time, and every time a big slow wave started to rise toward its peak, right on that upswing, it slipped in the little pulse of sound. Riding the wave. Pushing it from behind at exactly the right instant, the way you push a child on a swing at the top of the arc to send them higher. And the slow waves got bigger. About 8% bigger. That alone is something. To reach into an old sleeping brain and lift the very waves that time had been flattening. But the real prize was the memory test. Before bed, these people had learned a big stack of word pairs, 88 pairs. In the morning, they were tested. On the nights with the real well-timed sound, their overnight recall jumped by nearly 27%. On the nights with a fake version, sound that did nothing or no sound at all, the improvement was under 6%. Let me put that in plain counting. After the real stimulation, people pulled back about 9 more word pairs than they would have. After the fake, about 3. 3 words versus 9, just from a whisper of sound landing at the right moment while they slept. And here is the clue inside the clue. The thing that tells you this is real and not luck. It was not just whether they heard the sound, it was how precisely the sound landed on the peak of the wave. The people whose pulses hit closest to the true crest of the slow wave got the biggest memory boost by a wide margin. Miss the timing, and you get much less. It is like pushing the swing. Push at the top, and the child flies. Push a half second late, and you just jolt the chains, and the child slows down. Same shove, all in the timing. Which tells you the slow wave itself is doing the work, and the sound is only helping it stand up taller. So think about where the investigation has carried us. We started with an old brain losing words overnight, and an easy answer, the brain is just wearing out, nothing to be done. And that easy answer has fallen completely apart in our hands. The memory is not simply rotting, it is failing to get moved and failing to get cleaned. Because the slow waves that run both night jobs have gone quiet. And we have just watched people in their 70s get some of that memory back by doing nothing more than making those quiet waves a little louder at the right instant. The machine is not dead. It is idling. And it responds when you touch the right lever, which finally brings me back around to you, lying in your own bed tonight with no laboratory, no headphones wired to your skull, no machine reading your waves. Because the honest question you are asking is not about mice or blood tests. It is, what can I actually do before I turn out the light to help this whole beautiful night shift do its work? And to answer that, I have to take you back almost 100 years to an experiment so simple and so old that people had half forgotten it, done long before anyone had ever heard the word amyloid or dreamed there was a cleaning crew at all. 1924. 2 men, James Jenkins and Carl Dellenbach, sit down with a couple of patient subjects and a list of nonsense syllables. Not words, just noise you can pronounce. Zup, Kel, Baf. Meaningless little scraps, chosen precisely because they mean nothing, so nothing you already know can help you hold on to them. The subjects drill these syllables until they have them cold, perfect, no mistakes. And then the experimenters do something clever. Sometimes they send the subject off to sleep. Sometimes they let the subject stay awake and go about an ordinary day. And after 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, they call them back and ask, how many can you still say? Now, if forgetting were just a slow leak, if memories simply evaporated like a puddle in the sun, then it should not matter one bit what you do in those hours. An hour is an hour. The puddle shrinks either way. But that is not what they found. The syllables learned before sleep held on. The syllables followed by a busy waking day crumbled away far faster. Same brain, same list, same number of hours ticking by. The only difference was whether the person spent that time asleep or awake, and the sleeping hours protected the memory while the waking hours ate it alive. They had a lovely old-fashioned word for the forgetting: obliviscence. And their explanation was almost the opposite of everything I have been telling you. They were not thinking about cleaning crews or delivery trucks, they were thinking about traffic. When you stay awake, they said, your day comes pouring in. New faces, new conversations, 100 small chores, and every one of those new impressions crowds in and shoulders your fragile little syllables out of the way. Interference. The waking world overwrites you. But when you sleep, the road is empty. Nothing new comes barreling in to knock the fresh memory off its feet. It simply sits there, undisturbed, and settles. Here is why I bring up a study older than television. Because both things are true at once, and that is the delicious part. The old men in 1924 saw that sleep protects a memory by keeping the daytime traffic off it, and the people with their headphones and their blood tests all these decades later saw that sleep actively works on the memory, hauling it and cleaning around it. So the hour before you close your eyes is doubly precious. Whatever you put into your head last, right before the dark, is the thing that gets the empty road all night. It is the thing that does not have to fight the next day's flood, because for that little material, there is no next day standing between the learning and the sleep. It goes straight into the quiet, and people took that hint and pushed it further. They asked a bolder question. If sleep is when the sorting happens, can I reach into the sleeping brain and point at one particular memory and say, that one, work on that one? It sounds like a magician's trick, and yet, you learn something during the day while a certain sound is playing. A little tone, a particular noise, paired with the thing you are trying to learn, so the sound and the memory get glued together in your head. Then, hours later, while you are down in deep sleep, someone plays that same sound again. Softly, not enough to wake you. And the memory that was tied to it comes up for its turn on the night shift, gets reactivated, gets strengthened. They call it targeted memory reactivation, which is a mouthful, but the idea is childishly simple. You leave a bookmark in the day, and the sound turns to that page in the night. And it works. People remember the cued material better than the uncued. It has even been done in a daytime nap with older folks, and their performance on a hand-on-eye task came back sharper on the other side of the nap. You whispered to the sleeping brain, and the sleeping brain listened. So now put yourself back where I promised I would leave you. In your own bed. No headphones, no tones, no technician. What is left for you, an ordinary person, out of all this? And the answer turns out to be almost embarrassingly humble. It is not a machine. It is a scrap of paper and a pencil. There was a study at Baylor, 57 university students wired up overnight so the researchers could watch exactly when each one drifted off. And before lights out, some of them were told, take 5 minutes and write down the things you have already finished today. And the others were told, take 5 minutes and write down in detail the specific things you have to do tomorrow. That was the whole difference. Backward-looking list, or forward-looking list. And the ones who wrote tomorrow's to-do list fell asleep meaningfully faster than the ones who wrote about what was already done. Faster to sleep. And here is the detail I love. The more specific the list, the more particular and detailed the tasks they wrote down, the quicker they dropped off. Now, why in the world should writing a chore list put you to sleep faster? You would think listing your burdens would keep you up. But turn it around. What keeps a person awake, lying there in the dark staring at the ceiling? It is the mind that will not stop circling. Did I remember the thing? I must not forget the thing. Tomorrow I have to. Round and round, the same unfinished worries chasing their own tails, and every lap of that useless circling is a lap you are not spending asleep. What the pencil does is let you set the load down. You take the swirling, half-formed worry that your brain is desperately trying to hold on to, and you park it on the paper. Now the brain does not have to keep juggling it. It has somewhere safe to leave it. The circling stops, and you slip under sooner. And do you see why that tiny trick matters so enormously, given everything we have uncovered tonight? Because the deep sleep, the big slow waves, the delivery truck, and the cleaning crew, all of it lives in the early, richest part of the night. Every minute you lie there stewing is a minute stolen from the very stage of sleep that does the memory work. The worry does not just cost you rest, it robs the night shift of its working hours. So emptying your head onto that scrap of paper is not fussy little self-help. It is guarding the exact hours when your memories get carried across and your brain gets washed clean. And around that one act, you build the plain, unglamorous rest of it. The things the people who study aging keep quietly repeating. 7 to 9 hours. A bedroom kept cool and dark. Easy on the coffee once the afternoon turns. And the one that sounds too dull to matter and matters more than almost any of them. Go to bed at about the same time every night, and get up at about the same time weekends and all. Not because a rule is tidy, because the ragged, lurching schedule, late one night, early the next, is itself tied to a worse memory for the events of your own life. Regularity is not a nicety. It is medicine for the night shift. So there it is. The vanishing word pairs, the 70-year-old who lost more than half of them by morning, and the long trail that led us here. It was never that the brain simply rots and there is nothing to be done. It is that every single night, if you let it, a truck runs your memories from the little scratch pad up into permanent keeping, and a tide of fluid rises through the spaces between your cells and rinses the day's poisons away. You cannot see it, and you will not feel it, and it has been happening quietly inside your skull every dark hour of your whole life. All you have been asked, all along, is to lie down, let go of the day, and give the night its room to work.